Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Success Insight podcast. Our guest today is Lisa Luckett, a voice of reason in the chaos. Lisa is an entrepreneur, speaker, author, and mother of 3 young adults. As a 9/11 widow, a single mother, and breast cancer survivor, Lisa knows the value of life's struggles and sees the light or silver lining in every situation. Lisa is also the founder of Cozmeena, Enlightened Living, a lifestyle brand and social movement based on the foundational elements of warmth, comfort care, consideration, grace, and decency. Her first book, The Light in 9/11, Shocked by Kindness, Healed by Love, was published in 2018. Lisa Luckett, welcome to the Success Insight podcast.
Thank you so much, Howard. It is my pleasure and honor to be here. Thank you.
Lisa, when you and I first met through our friend Andre a couple of weeks ago, and we had the chat, and I know you had appeared on her stage a couple of years ago. And when we met and I learned you were a 9/11 widow, that immediately brought up, oh my God, what are we going to talk about? How do I have a conversation here? And what really dawned on me is that 9/11, it's not so much the event itself, but what has happened to you in your life as a result of this horrific event. And I would love you to share that story with our listeners. But before that, if you could just talk a little bit about what were you doing, who were you, and what was life like pre-9/11?
Great. As I mentioned earlier when we were talking, my book actually starts on September 10th. And a very difficult morning of a day on my 40th, I just turned 41. I had had my third child 3 or 4 months before that. I was lactating. I was miserable. I was postpartum depressed and wound up like a top. That we had left New York. Ted and I both had careers in New York. We had our first child, our daughter there, and moved to the New Jersey suburbs about 2.5 years. She was around 2.5 when we left. And it was about 4 to 4.5 years later when 9/11 happened. So we were only there together for a pretty short period of time, considering all that has happened in the wake of 9/11. But, we were in our early 40s. I had a big career in New York, an executive. I was in radio advertising sales. And I came home and I found motherhood, what I thought was going to be the white picket fence and this joyful, loving, incredibly just beautiful experience, to be really, really hard. And the monotony and tedium of motherhood, nobody told me about that. My daughter had been raised by a nanny, and I was I was a very troubled working mother. And so I really respect any woman who does both jobs. It's the hardest thing I ever did in my life. And I'll be very honest, I didn't do either of my jobs well once my daughter was here. I was so distracted when I was at either place, thinking of work when I was home or thinking of home when I was at work. That's where I was before the day that changed our world forever.
It's interesting in being around masterminds, and many of these masterminds have both men and women in it. And I hear some of these stories of, everybody's just working so hard, too hard, putting 12-hour days, 16-hour days, and there's never a time off. It's always 24/7. And if you're lucky, you're taking the kids out to McDonald's for lunch or dinner. And we're just so distracted. And then we have the idea of parenthood, and that's a distraction too, because some of us are just not prepared for it. I would imagine that that's frustrating. Now comes this major event, this horrific event. How did life change for you as a result of that event?
We only have like 20 minutes, right? 30 minutes?
We probably need a couple hours, a couple days.
Right. I'll try to surmise that. Okay. So my husband was going in, he had to be in on a trading desk he's at the North Tower of the World Trade Center, and their day started at 7. So it was an hour commute. So he was leaving the house at 5:30 in the morning to catch a 6 o'clock boat, which was really a nice commute, different from a train or a bus. And that's one of the reasons we moved to where we are. It was a really nice across the New York Harbor commute, a really nice way to go. So he would get in, he'd leave at 5:30, and get home at 8 o'clock. So honestly, I had 3 little kids. My kids were 7, 4, and 4 months. And during the week, he wasn't around. He was home, or if he wasn't home, he was out entertaining. And maybe he would get home in time to give them a bath. So my day-to-day life didn't change very much at all. And one of the things that happened to me that morning, which is why there is a book and a couple behind it, is things got very simple. It became about my kids. And when things get simplified like that, it actually makes things easier. So I kept things as consistent for them as possible. Meanwhile, my house was like Grand Central Station. My phone did not stop ringing for 3 straight months. I actually was nursing my son, Timmy, and shortened a ligament in my shoulder from holding the phone to my ear for so long. So, it was just a crazy, chaotic time. But I was also being showered with the love and kindness from around the world, literally. I mean, I was getting phone calls from Ted's clients in Europe and abroad. I was getting notes and cards and people and food for not just months and the first few years, but I still get the attention today. It has gratefully, I'm very grateful I had it, but it was a lot. So I had a very interesting job in my career where I was a national radio rep, and it prepped me actually to handle the chaos that followed in the days, weeks, months, years that followed 9/11. So one of my messages to people about my experience is that, I was actually in this strange way prepared to handle 9/11, which is why I'm a little different. And my life and my childhood and my upbringing and in a lot of dysfunction of good people that just had a lot of emotional damage also prepared me to receive. So my life prepared me to handle this. And this job I had was like prioritizing fires. Every day I would walk in and I would have clients screaming and customers demanding. And I was the one they could beat up. And you're literally kind of going through, the day with your hair on fire and prioritizing for months and months and months, trying to get through it. And that's what it was, trying to get through the days after 9/11. I knew I just had to put my head down and deal with the next thing that came up and not look right or left, but stay focused and calm and just do what was needed then.
How long did that process in your life continue until you realized, and maybe it was another event, maybe it was some epiphany? When did that course of your work and what you're doing today kind of come in for a little course correction, going from doing what needs to get done to get through the day, to get my kids through the day, but then all of a sudden there is a shift and now I know what I need to do? When did that occur?
Instantaneously. This is what I learned from my experience, and how I would explain this first book is that it's really about healing from trauma, any trauma. And that it's about choosing to see the light in your struggle, the lesson that is there for us, because we're actually here to learn. We are here to, life is not happening to us. It's actually happening for us. We're being shown these experiences in these struggles and in these contrasts that are giving us the wisdom to do the next thing better. And then the third piece is the healing power of kindness. Within 2 weeks, not even, probably a week after 9/11, my warrior self showed up. And it came up from my core of just this power, this empowerment of, you know what? There is no way I'm going to let Teddy and all of those other people who died die in vain. I will spend my life making something good come from this, because it's the only way we're going to be able to countermand this terrorism, because the terrorists can't win. That is not okay with me. And it became this intention of trying to figure it out. That's the only thing I could figure that was the opposite. And how do you do that? Well, if 9/11 was the equivalent of breaking every emotional bone in your body simultaneously, and in my opinion, times 50 million people who all lived in the region, you would go to the doctor for your body. So I went to the doctor for my mind, and I went to the analyst's couch. And I took my first 40 very difficult years. I had a rough upbringing, but very normal, what looked normal to the world, extreme within normal parameters is how I would say it. I had an alcoholic father, but he was very, very typical of the generation of white, middle-class, suburban New York metro, very intelligent, educated, high functioning. And then my mother, and they were from the 50s. The wife was very pretty and she made sure dinner was on the table and the kids were clean and sitting properly and nobody argued. And, the father commanded. And from that came a very dysfunctional life and a life experience, which I was able to then take to the analyst couch along with school bullying and all kinds of social dysfunction because of my experience in my home life. I wouldn't know that if I hadn't done full psychoanalytic analysis. And so the shame around therapy at the time was huge. This is almost 20 years ago. So one of the lights, we talk about silver linings and the lights in 9/11, is that therapeutic mental health and processes and modalities have become commonplace and socially acceptable. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's no longer a stigma. And I mean, even seeing a coach for, I'm unhappy. You don't just live with the unhappiness, you do something about it. So with the work with the therapist, did you start to craft these building blocks for the work that you're doing today? How did that start to evolve?
Well, this is a really fun story, actually. It is the story.
That's good. Let's have fun.
All right. Yes. Well, I think it's fun. Your listeners might think I'm crazy, but I promise them this is available to everyone. So what happened is I'd go to my therapy, and I've had such a frustrating life of misunderstanding and being misunderstood. That's the best way I can put it. I wasn't crazy or wacky or anything. I mean, maybe a little wacky, but I looked normal, but I was really unhappy and I was really insecure and I had so much self-loathing. But from the outside, I looked great and fine, whatever. A lot of people feel this way. So I was peeling each layer back. Like I think of it as a ball of string, and you're unwinding each string as an experience or a relationship or, something that is a memory. And as you go back, you peel away, and they say an onion, but that's not nearly enough layers. So about 4 years later, 4 years into it, I popped through the ceiling to mental health. And the way I would describe that is I would say to my therapist, like, how am I going to know? How am I going to know when I've achieved mental health? Does a bell go off? Like, do they notify you by mail? Like, what happens? And she would say to me, you are going to get the most mind-blowing rush of creative energy like nothing you have ever known. And I was like, I want that. I want that more than anything. I mean, you couldn't have dangled a better carrot for me. Well, one day, I don't know what she said or what I said, but I sat bolt upright on the couch and I went, oh my God, I have it. I have the answer to everything. World peace. All we have to do is be nice. And in the second breath, I went, wait a minute. Who is taking care of women? Who is caring for the caregiver? And I know now, many years later, that was in 2005, late 2005, early 2006. So that's a story of how Cozmeena Enlightened Living came to be. Because what I basically received was a download for a brand of kindness. And I can tell you now, it's from my first 40 years of even the people who should have loved me weren't nice to me. My community wasn't nice. People weren't nice. And it wasn't until 9/11, Howard, when guess what? Everyone was nice to me.
Wow.
And I didn't know that consciously. I can tell you that now. But I can tell you because of the kindness that was shown to me, because from strangers around the world, from local, regional friends, but strangers to this day, that 9/11 actually healed me from a lifetime of pain.
So what I hear you saying is that this lack of kindness from the people around you, was that real? And
yes,
it was real. But then after 9/11, that shifted. And now there's kindness.
Well, it shifted because I shifted.
Okay.
So the way I describe what happened to me on 9/11 is it's like I was shot out of the proverbial box.
Okay.
Box I had tried to fit in my first 40 years very unsuccessfully, only to realize I'd always belonged out of the box in the first place, which, by the way, we actually all belong out of the box.
Of course.
But we conform. We look outside of ourselves for our validation instead of recognizing that all we need is inside of us. in the form of our trust and intuition of what we know. And I was getting literally intuitive guidance from the morning of 9/11 when I turned the TV on and I sat on the couch screaming with my two boys. And when I finally came off the couch, I just knew to trust myself. That everything was broken, anything normal was over. And something did that. That wasn't me thinking. And it was with me the entire time. So what happened, how I changed, is that by 11 o'clock that morning, I realized the only way I could help my friends and neighbors around me who were in so much pain, just like I was, but it had happened to me. People project into the situation because we all know one day someone's going to die that we love. So what happened? Everybody's looking at me and they're just as flipped out as I am, or more so perhaps. And I get this voice that says, Lisa, let them help you. And I let down my guard and I surrendered to what was always my alpha personality of I can do it. I'm a woman from the 60s, 70s, 80s. I can do everything. And I let go and I allowed people to help me. And I was overwhelmed when in that moment, literally, I kid you not, by this unbelievable feeling of gratitude and humility and this wave of love that hit me, that has been with me ever since. It literally changed me that morning.
As this change had begun to envelop you and shifted how you think and show up.
Absolutely. I mean, it took down my guard, right? Because now I show my vulnerability. Well, the greatest, and we know now, if anybody follows Brene Brown, we know vulnerability is the ultimate courage.
Right. Yes.
It's not weakness. It's the opposite of weakness. And what you get when you show your relationships and you show people your vulnerable side is you get a relationship that is even deeper and richer and more connected. And if they don't respond to you that way, it's a sorting mechanism that says, I don't need that person in my world.
Right. And I remember that quote from Brene Brown. I've probably listened to that book on tape a couple times now. So now with this newfound enlightenment, you have founded Cozmeena. Tell us more about the organization and who is being served by it, and how is it this movement really making an impact in the people's lives?
You know, it's been a really interesting time, Howard, and I know a lot of your listeners are entrepreneurs and people in purpose-centered, inspired businesses. And what I've learned, and we were talking a little earlier, it takes a long time, right? It takes 10 years to be an overnight success. And I love that quote because I've been working on this for 7 actualized years. This is my 7th year in a 20-year campaign to bring this brand of kindness to the world. And it's a social movement, right? So it's not really a tangible thing. It can be. The first 3 years of these 7 were teaching women to knit as a functional meditation. And what they were knitting was one thing, which are this thing I created called a Cozmeena shawl. And what it is a big metaphoric hug that you can make for someone who's going through something painful. A child, that's sick, or a diagnosis or a death. When there's nothing else you can do to take care of someone, you can knit for them. You can make them something meaningful with your love infused in it. And so I ended up creating this knitting kit. I taught 200 women to knit one by one at a time on my couch in my living room. I would hold open knitting on Mondays and Tuesdays for a couple hours in the afternoon where people could come and get fixed and learn the next step. It takes a couple steps. There's online videos to learn it. It's all taught through the website. But what happened was I realized it became a social study in women and in the caregiver. And this is now 7 years ago. Nobody was really talking about the caregiver. You hear it now. But this is part of the parallel development of a lot of people waking up and understanding what I'm talking about. The whole idea that life is happening for us, that we aren't victims. I'm not original here. There's such a movement of this right now. So the caregiver is finally getting this attention because there's nothing more draining than taking care of someone who's dying. But who gets all the attention?
Person that's dying.
Right. We're waking up to the nuances of emotional intelligence because we've had enough time now in our culture. We've maximized physical fitness. When you have to do steroids to compete in the Olympics or compete in any of the professional sporting events, have we not maximized physical fitness? When kids are getting 1600s and 4.0s and the Wall Street's trading at 30,000, or putting the explosion of AI, have we not maximized intelligence? Well, one of my theories about 9/11 was, why were we so emotionally unprepared to handle 9/11 as a culture? And where was all the wise counsel to get us through it? Well, if we as human beings are a three-legged stool of mind, body, and spirit, or intellect, physical fitness, and emotional wellness, we didn't have any training emotionally, so we tipped over. And that's where we are. We can right that stool back up. We just need to decide and make that a priority to learn about those emotional needs, because nothing is mutually exclusive in those three things. And in fact, the emotional component of humanness is actually what ties it all together. So we've kind of been doing it backwards, but we have the time and we're there now. And we're starting to see it in many, many ways in society right now.
I would venture, based on that statement, you have hope.
I have great hope. I have great hope. In fact, really great hope. I don't want people to worry. We are so consumed by fear that we're so addicted to it now. The news media is just prompting us all the time. The best thing you can do for your wellness is turn off the TV, turn off the news.
Yes.
Turn off the news. It's not serving you. It is not a community service. I was in media in New York for 15 years. I promise you, they're not there for your well-being. They're there to make money. And it's a feeding frenzy on the lowest, most base common denominator of humanity, which is fear, the fight-flight reflex.
Right.
We can control that, but everybody's got to decide to take a little self-discipline here and not be led around. We can actually make that choice and change things.
How do you help individuals make those choices, or to stop feeding the fear and then make that choice, make that shift to, I'm going to develop hope. I'm going to nurture my hope and to feed that into my mind, body, and spirit versus the fear?
There's only one word. It's gratitude. It's always gratitude. And it's because, and I've said this to so many people, here we're sitting almost 19 years after 9/11. The world looks exactly the same outside.
Yes.
The sun comes up in the morning in the east and it sets in the west. The seasons go round and round. Nothing has changed except us and how we are. The analogy I use in the book in the introduction is that it's like a stagecoach barreling down the mountainside in an old spaghetti Western, out of control because the driver has let go of the reins. And that is what's happened. We let go of the reins. We went, oh my God, this can't have happened. How could they do this to us? And the truth is, until we turn around introspectively, now this can happen on a personal basis, until you turn around and look at what you're doing or look at what you have, because we have so much. That's how you shift back into a place of hope, into a place of gratitude. Is you decide to take a deep breath. You decide to go outside for a walk. You decide to go drop by to a friend's house instead of turning on the news at 5 o'clock. You interact with each other because we all need each other. You don't flip through Facebook another 20 minutes. You have to take some initiative to change your habits because we've gotten into some bad habits. That's all.
I love that, just the changing of the habits. And I'm thinking, in the four walls of my one-bedroom condominium where I host this podcast, the blinds are closed. And if I'm not careful, it's the end of the day. And then I have to remind myself, I need to go outside and get some fresh air. I have no idea what the weather is like. It could be snowing, could be having a blizzard, could be raining. But I need to do it to get out and to remind myself that I'm alive and that I can go walk down the street and say hello, pet the dog, give somebody some eye contact, but just feel like I'm a part of humanity. versus going on to the next thing on Facebook or reading the news and never having gone out. And I love the fact that we have to learn or rekindle our love of getting out and meeting people and not being tied down to this, to the news, to the media, to Facebook, to LinkedIn, Twitter, et cetera. And we just have to do that.
Well, and one of our issues in our culture too, and you're so right, and it's, and I'm sure in your coaching practice and business, how do you shift a bad mood? Well, the best thing you can do is change your venue. Walk outside or walk back inside, but literally change your environment by stepping out the door. It changes everything. And when you look up in the sky and you remember how small we are, we think we're so big. We're not. We're tiny. This lifetime is 100 years in a 16 billion year universe. It's a nanosecond. Like, we're taking this thing entirely too seriously. And we can do a better job of just enjoying it. It's a gift. And we've bought into and we've become very addicted. So we have an issue in our culture, and humanity has an issue. In other cultures, less, I think, less so, but I'm sure they're in there too. But we have a very addictive personality in our culture. And addictions are really hard to break.
Yes.
I'm a recovering alcoholic. Part of the reason I broke through the ceiling to mental health, this is an important story, is that my therapist said to me, Lise, this is about 2.5 years in. We can't finish your therapy. I think she was frustrated with me until we get your father out of the room. And we can't get your father out of the room until you stop drinking. And it's not like right? It's not like I was drinking out of my coffee cup in the morning. I had a wine habit at night. I drank a half bottle of wine at night. I love wine. It was very fun. The glass, it just made me feel grown up. It was something I didn't have to change with my, share with my children, which was everything else in my life, maybe the adult thing. So you can justify it lots of ways. But you know what? When it came down to it, every morning I would wake up and I'd say, I just can't drink anymore because I'm not sleeping well. And I'm just feeling a little south of good. I'm not really hungover, but I'm not great either. And that was every day. And then finally I just said, I want this so badly that I will stop. And it's like anything we do. When you set your mind to it, it's uncomfortable for a little while, but it's a lot easier to stop than you think it is. You just have to decide there's something more important.
Yeah, that change of the habit, whatever it is, it has to be strong enough to want you to make that change and to be able to allow it to stick. And hopefully you have friends, family who are there to kind of help support you on that as well.
Which isn't always the case, especially in an alcoholic system. So that's I am not saying any of this is easy.
Yeah.
But as one of our favorite family mottos is from A League of Their Own with Tom Hanks. And he says to Gina Davis when she wants to quit baseball, it's, if it was easy, everyone would do it. It's the hard that makes it great. The achievement you feel, the gratification you feel when you have done something hard and you have made it through is worth it. I did it. I broke generational chains from all corners of both of our families and took my kids forward in a different trajectory. Quitting drinking was the single most important thing I've ever done. Anytime you introduce any kind of drug or chemistry to your body, your brain, you can't retrieve old memory. And I was doing psychoanalytic clinical analysis where you lay on a couch, you look at a wall, the therapist is behind you, and you're kind of free associating when you can't come up with a particular story. And then at the end of the session, all of these random pieces fall together, and I can't even count the number of aha moments I had. And they were better than any drug on the planet.
That's amazing. Lisa, I think we could go on and on here. And perhaps we have just to come back and have further discussions. But because I suspect we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. I'd love to learn more about Cozmeena, Enlightened Living, and really perhaps even some stories from the individuals who are a part of this community. Because I know many of them have suffered from illness and other trials in their lives. So would love to learn more about that. And also the sharing the story of the pocket heart. But I think you warned me that this could be a long podcast.
I'm sorry to everybody if it was too long, but
no, but if
just want to help, I just want people to feel like we have so much. We have so much. We can't forget. Don't listen to what people are telling you. Just do what you know is true. Like, look around.
Well,
we're so fortunate.
Yeah. And I think we need voices like yours, the voices like, you mentioned Brené Brown. I mean, that is talk about a world of chaos. I mean, such a voice of reason. And so her voice, your voice, Cozmeena's voice, and somehow we have to arise above and beyond the sphere that is in society. And so to really to kind of live a life of, as again, Brené Brown would say, wholehearted living and showing gratitude and not being afraid of being vulnerable. So there's a lot more to be done. And I'm so happy that you are part of that journey. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me just share it. And I really appreciate just your time and your audience's time.
It's our pleasure. Lisa, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work and kind of get started on this journey of fulfilling life and the balance of their mind, body, and spirit, where are the best places for them to go?
Either two websites. The most current one would be my author website, because the book was years 5 and 6 of my 7 years. So this is the 7th year. It is lisaluckett.com, which is Luckett, Lisa, Lisa.com. And then Cozmeena is a made-up word and meaning kindness, or the original meaning was where coziness meets glamour, because I didn't know how to spell Pashmina, and that's a long story, which is in the book, but and on the website. COZ as in zebra, MEENA. So we're cozy and cozy. So Cozmeena.com.
Fantastic. And so we will provide links back to lisaluckett.com and Cozmeena.com as well in our show notes. And I know you have a presence on Facebook and on LinkedIn, so we'll provide those backlinks on our show notes as well. Thank you so much for joining us on this February day in 2020. And really, I think of one lesson that I have learned today from our conversation is, I have a little call to take after our podcast is over. It's part of my other job, but I am definitely going to walk outside and just remind myself this humanity is out there and I need to go pay a visit. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's great. That's great.
All right. And Lisa, once again, thank you for being on today's show, and we'll get you back on, okay?
Yeah, I'd love it. Thank you.
Very good. All right, folks, so we've just been chatting with Lisa Luckett, and she is the voice of reason in the chaos. And we have been chatting about her life as it's been affected by the events of 9/11 and this journey she's on to help others become more enlightened in their living, their lifestyle, and really to, create a foundation globally for warmth, comfort, care, consideration, grace, decency, and vulnerability, and of course, showing gratitude. So we're so grateful that she was able to spend time from her day with us. So we will provide the links back to her website, lisaluckett.com, Cozmeena.com, as well to her social sites. We hope you enjoyed today's show. If you are intrigued, please do go visit her sites. And also you can find her book, The Light in 9/11, Shocked by Kindness, Healed by Love, out on her websites as well as on Amazon. We'll provide links to there as well. And let us know what you think about today's podcast. Leave a comment. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, our main successinsightpodcast.com page. We just want to hear what you think about today's episode and also about the podcast itself. So folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day, and go show some gratitude. We'll see you on the next episode of the Success Insight Podcast. Take care now.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.